Welcome to the Seraphine podcast. I'm Seraphine Arocha, and today we're talking to my friend Sally Walked. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Sally Ries Walked, right?
Yes.
It's pretty cool because I asked Sally to be on the podcast for a number of reasons. Number one is she's my friend, and number two, she has the most interesting life, I think, out of anyone I've met here in Kansas City since I've returned. So,
That's good to know.
a little background here. Sally was a part of the R&B group Oscar. Yes. And I love it because when I first talked to her, we stumbled upon each other because I teach a class, a bar class over at one of the health clubs here. And I love music and I love to curate playlists. And a lot of you will see on my website that I have really eclectic taste. So
You have
Sally,
good taste.
thank you. And Sally was like, all right, like, where is this coming from?
And all these songs, I was like, whoa, especially the George Michael.
Oh, the George Michael. God, I loved it. I actually wore on one of my podcasts, Victoria Beckham made a t-shirt for the LGBTQ community this last month that says "Listen Without Prejudice" and all rainbow letters. And I'm like, George. So I always tell this story a lot about how, I got married at age 40, and we both could kind of relate to having this kind of interesting, odd life. And I tell the story about how I was always in love with gay men. I had posters of like Boy George, George Michael, and then really thinking that I would end up with them. And it turns out that they are so gay. And so that's, I think,
still.
yeah. So aside
nice
from
dream.
Right, it was a nice dream, totally. But she did. She came up to me after class, and little did I know that she was a music artist in her former life and is now actually kind of going back into it. So,
Definitely.
P.S. If you hear things, you guys know, I think most of you know that my two dogs are always here, like around us. But just in case, I just wanted to remind you, Ace and Chunk make their little cameos.
Chunk. Is that Chunk?
This is Ace. You would think Ace with the big,
tricky.
because he's a chub. Chunk's the small one
The
and back
tiny
here.
one.
You guys will see him eventually. But anyway, so we'll get into the conversation.
The combo.
Yeah, right. So I'm looking at the timeline, right? So you came from pretty much Wisconsin, Kansas City area, and then Mizzou was where you went to college.
For a year, yeah.
And for a year. And then you said, fuck it. And you were like, all right, I'm going.
And then after I was in New York for like, I don't know how many months, 6-8 months, I went to NYU for not even a semester because I got cast in an off-Broadway show. But I did try and go back to school.
Interesting. That's so crazy. So what was the off-Broadway show? Was it a musical? Was it a play?
It was a musical, but it was like this company. It was an off-Broadway company. Back then they'd have some of the smaller companies. Well, off-Broadway is smaller than Broadway, only because the size of the theater.
Yeah.
That's what that, I don't know if a lot of people know that, but so it was a company called Light Opera of Manhattan. They called it Loom. And so I was a classically trained singer. So, but I never wanted to sing full-scale opera. Mm-hmm. Like my teacher in New York City was an opera singer. She was not happy that I was like, not so much.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so I got cast in the first show I did with Loom. I got cast, I was 19. I got cast as a replacement for somebody. And I was like, okay, and I, this music wasn't hard, da-da-da. And then they go, oh yeah, by the way, do you have tap shoes? I go, no. Why? There's a big tap number in the second act. I go, no freaking way. Of course, these are all singers who move. So
yeah.
When casting calls, singers who move are singers who can't really dance.
Yeah.
But they all got their damn tap shoes on. I'm like, oh, Lord, help me. I just stood there and looked at the person in front of me. It was hilarious. Never again did I ever put those things on.
That's
never
crazy.
again. No more tap for me.
I can only imagine. Now, were you the kind of like voice when you were younger? Did you have the vibrato that?
No.
What is that? What is a vibrato? Is it put on?
It can be.
Okay.
You can control it. I could control it. Like sing a straight tone and then add vibrato at the end, which a lot of pop singers do that and stuff. But some people can't control it.
Interesting. So you're the voice in the register, like
it has to do with the air and just how it moves through your
I used to make fun. I think I was jealous of the
fun.
girls we had like the Gold Dust, Wichita, Southeast. That's where I went to high school. We were like the Golden Buffalo Singers or whatever we were. And I remember there was one girl, Rachel Keiss. Rachel, I'm not talking shit on you. You're an amazing singer. And she's an amazing artist now. But she had this voice where it was like, oh, and I'm like, I was trying so hard. And here I am singing Meatloaf's Anything for Love because my register's so low and flat. And then here she is. And I'm like, why don't I get any of the main parts? And it's like, because I won't do that. And I'm like, oh God, that's my song.
But I love that sound in a female voice.
Yeah, I do too.
Rich, kind of.
I do like that husky kind of, I like Halsey right now. Like, God.
There's some pretty cool.
There's some cool voices out there right now. And oh God, Billie Eilish. I mean, Jesus Christ.
That kid is amazing. And her brother.
Oh,
ridiculous.
No, it's crazy. It must be really interesting too, because I mean, you had Epic Records. I mean, come on. Like that's like you were signed in the 90s to a
the video age.
Right? The video age. I mean, and it's like the black and white, like En Vogue, like Maxi Priest. Do you like that kind of like?
I couldn't believe that. It was like the other day when you played that.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah, he's the best.
So now I'm also looking at this. You were on Star Search?
Yes.
Shut the front fucking
Isn't
door.
that fun?
Oh my God.
The original American Idol type show.
So like Ed McMahon, shut the front door.
I'm
admitting
it. Yes. I'm telling everyone now.
What is Ed McMahon like? And then also what was like to be rated with this? Was your heart like, or was it rigged?
It was, well, I have to say, I don't know, because what happened to me was kind of interesting. So he was awesome. I mean, he was just kind of like there, did his thing, didn't really, he was really nice to the contestants and all that kind of stuff. And we shot 2 shows in a day. So you had to like pick your song or whatever, and then they had to okay it and flew us out to LA. And so
and was this with Oscar?
No, it was by myself.
Shut the okay.
Right after I think I'd met Kia, maybe. No, maybe not. She saw me on it though. Okay. I didn't know her though, but she had seen me on it.
Interesting.
So so you went out there and we did the first show and I won or whatever. And then the second one, I killed it even better than the first one. Yeah. And my mom and dad flew out to see me and everything. It was so cute. And we're standing at the thing where they put your number up there. And so they put the numbers up and they're all kind of like, I don't know, 3 point whatever. And then kind of got like blurry and mixed. And then they just stopped. Because the first one was like saying that I beat this girl or whatever. And then they kind of stopped and there's like dead silence, no numbers. And I'm like, what the hell is happening? And they kind of, we had some sort of malfunction. And then the other girl won.
Oh my God.
Were
you just, you were happy?
I was so happy. I couldn't wait to get off.
Oh my God.
It's nerve wracking.
I can only imagine because I watched the show like religiously as a kid. And I remember just that feeling of like crossing my fingers for the person I wanted. Yeah. And then also watching like the angst in people's faces like,
and there was, It was, I was, damn it. And everyone thought I was crazy. I was like, no, I'm so glad.
That's so funny.
Glad I lost. At first, I was like, I got to do this again. I got to come up with another song.
How old were you when you did this?
I was like 24, maybe.
Wow. Like and then did you have to, was there like a preliminary audition?
Yeah, I think we had to send them, we sent them something. God, I'm sure we did. It
I
wasn't
need
a live
to dig
audition,
that.
though.
Can you dig that footage up? I want to see some.
My mom has a VHS of it somewhere.
I want to see some vintage Star Search.
Hilarious. And I had to, I'll never forget the second time I had to walk down this big flight of stairs. I'm like, shit.
I know.
I'm falling down.
No, the worst, stages and heels, man. They I can't even. I've had one too many moments. Yeah. I will share them later, but not now. So then how were you approached to get into Oscar?
So, one of the girls in the group, Kia Jeffries, I'm trying to remember where we met. I think we met at an audition for something else. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was, but so she talked to me and she's like, I'm putting together this group. Do you have any interest? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. Let's try it. So she called me and then called the other 2 girls. I think took us a minute to find the last girl. And then we just started singing together and started messing around with the harmonies and singing a cappella and stuff. And then we went and sang at the Apollo Theater.
That's so
At not the televised amateur night, the non-televised, where people were throwing things and yelling and screaming. I'm not kidding.
Oh my God.
I walked out on that stage and I thought, oh my God.
And Sally was the only white girl
Yes,
in the
that was-
group.
And blonde.
And blonde. And you were blonde. She had like Rapunzel
Really
hair.
long.
I mean, that's crazy. So you stood out like whatever. And
Yeah.
they're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So
Get
in
her
the,
off the stage, basically.
I'm sure in the harmony part, were you soprano? Were
Yeah,
you,
I always did the higher part, even though now my voice has got a lot lower. But yeah, I
Yeah.
always did the high part.
That's so crazy. So
fun,
so
though.
you did this, and then were you were already signed by Epic
No.
during this, or no?
No,
Not
we got
yet.
signed soon after that, though.
Yeah.
Soon
And what
after
was that like? Was that like the champagne and the, oh my God, we're going to make it? Like you see those movies where, the Lady Gaga, like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
It wasn't really like
no,
that.
no,
but
it wasn't. You're like,
not so much. It was fun, though. I mean, the launch party was fun. The
Yeah.
press party kind of thing, that was fun. And then we recorded the record. It was a lot of fun. It really was.
Yeah.
We had a good time. A lot of
did
fun
you
time.
ever have one of those moments where you felt like you made it, or were you always kind of like, well, I'm on the brink? Or were you, because for me, I don't think I would ever feel, even if I was freaking Oprah, I don't think I would ever feel like I made it. But there's some people who, like Madonna, who we'll talk about later, who like straight out the gate, it was
She
like,
knew.
I'm a
Yeah.
star.
She did. I was never like that. No.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I don't know. Maybe this will work.
Yeah.
And and then I remember we'd do shows like with Boys to Men. I mean, these big acts, we were opening for, even Jamie Foxx was singing back then. We opened some show for him, I remember, and Brian McKnight. I mean, these are great R&B singers. And
Wow.
So yeah, so I thought, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe we're okay.
Yeah.
We were kind of the newbies in
Yeah.
all these things. So, but I never ever felt like, yes,
Yeah.
like Madonna did. It always
Yeah.
blew me away when she'd say like, I'm going to conquer the world or whatever. It's like, good for you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to conquer getting out my front door in
Right?
the morning. I'm just,
Seriously, I wish I had just like a droplet of her like bravado and confidence. But then, you see her now and she's such, age is a funny thing, what it does to people, because it's not that she's not a humble person, but she's now more gracious the way she talks. So it's interesting to see and how motherhood has changed her. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
sorry. Yeah.
So then,
awesome.
you're in this group.
Mm-hmm.
I think you did like Arsenio Hall. What were some of the standout moments for you?
Well, I can tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
One of the first shows we did was in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So we're a new act doing dumb little shows in dumb little clubs, except for Arsenio.
Yeah.
And I walked in that place, I'll never forget. And the waitress, well, I guess they were waitresses. They all wore like house slippers, like slippers, like
Yeah.
okay. And then we went into the green room, which was like a bedroom. That was fun. That was
my
an
God.
interesting night. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, the other shows were good. They're like radio promo shows. So you really would do like a few songs and you'd sing to track. We didn't have a live band or anything like that. And
Would you sing like a cappella? Or
not usually.
no,
We'd
no.
sing to a track.
I
Yeah,
gotcha.
We'd sing to a track.
And were you in like a radio, like in the studio, or?
Not usually. Usually we'd be
Yeah.
in a little club where they were house
Oh,
slippers.
interesting.
Not
Oh,
all the
that-
times,
okay.
but yeah.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
did you do radio promo
We
stuff?
did.
Or no?
We did radio interviews a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of interviews because that's a promo tour basically.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. You go all over the place, and that was interesting. And then the biggest show we did was it was a radio like a convention for radio hosts and programmers. The program managers that put all the songs together for the radio. So it was this big deal in LA, and that's where all the other big acts were, and we were like this new act, like the Boys to Men and those guys. So you did these shows, you wanted to get them to play your record,
Yeah.
okay? So we ended up doing our second single that day, and it was this big convention sort of thing. And I, for some reason, started most of the songs on the record. I don't know why, but so we started the song and we had our backs to the audience. We turned around and I decided for some strange reason that I was going to walk down off the stage and go sing to somebody. I didn't know who he was, why he was there. I mean, I knew he was a radio guy, but I didn't know who he was. And so I was like, I just went for it. And I did. And it's a real sexy song. It's called Keep Touching Me. And I was like, keep touching me, touch me. And I was like, okay. I go sit on his lap. I was doing the whole thing.
You're like, I dare you to touch me.
And he's all like, people loved it. I didn't plan it or anything. Yeah. So after the show, I found out that he was like one of the few that would not play our record. And then all of a sudden he said, you know what, I think I'm going to play the record. So it worked out nicely for us.
You touched him in more than one way.
I guess I did. That was really fun.
I love it. Though. That's cool. Those are those moments in your life to where your heart's beating, but you're like, I just got to freaking do it.
I'm do it. I had no idea what was going to happen, but it turned out okay.
So now, what's your perception now? Because music has changed so much. Mm-hmm. And now kind of like, looking at, you're kind of re-entering into going to songwriting. What are the biggest differences now?
Well, songwriting is such an interesting craft, which I love. I think music is coming around. It always goes, it's cyclical, you know, mm-hmm. Things come back. And I'm starting to hear a little more of like almost like a 60s thing going on in some of these songs. There's a lot of the B3 organs coming in and like stuff like that, the Motown kind of thing. Yeah. I'm hearing some new stuff. I don't know this guy's name, but I heard something the other day. I'm like, wow, that is a flashback. And it was very cool. So I can relate to that. And, you know, it's just all about the production. You know what I mean? Because a great song is a great song is a great song. It can be done many different ways if it's a great song. If it's just great production, that's nice. So I find a lot of the songs are just kind of throwaways, you know what I mean? Like, which is, that's fine. But like, I think it's coming back to like the John Legend and all that, that kind of, and Alicia Keys, these are amazing songwriters, amazing singers. And that never will get old. Yeah. That'll never go away. They can do all the production with the other artists that are good. But, I much prefer hearing the other, like the John Legend. Yeah,
and it's funny because there's times where I like to hear a remixed version or a melody that's familiar, and then you change it up. Like I remember the first time that I heard "Forever Young" redone by Jay-Z. From what's the group called? I want to say Versailles for some reason, but I don't think it is. It's I'm trying to think that "Forever Young" I'm gonna be. Yeah, you sound a lot better doing it than me. I'm like "Forever Young," and then he's like, "It's like life on a video." That kind of like he raps over this song that's like this epic like. It is, and it's kind of a cheesy song if you hear the 80s like version, but then he hits this bass beat. So like there's a part of me that like I love that nostalgia. But then also it's a remixed melody of something, but Jay-Z puts his thing over it, which makes it brilliant. So it's a rarity now where you hear something like, for instance, when Billie Eilish came out, I was like, what?
Something very new.
So new.
Very new sound. I mean, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's
because
crazy.
It's so different, and they make it work, which is not an easy thing.
I'm sure.
I mean, like, and the way he, mixes her voice and the funky harmonies she'll do, and just her whole persona. And she's so young.
She's so young and so creative. It's crazy though, because you have Billie Eilish eyes. You've got those like, I'm like, it cracks me up. But I can only imagine when you have, you're writing a song, right? And I know I get in my own way, just rewatching these podcasts. I'm like, what the fuck am I talking about? What am I like? Ask the goddamn question. In music, I would think it'd be the same way of like when you're writing, you're like, oh, this has been done before, or I wrote those lyrics before, but I'm kind of just throwing in a rhyming word that's how. So when you write music, what's your process?
It changes, but usually, like now I write a little different than I used to. I used to always do co-writes, and now I still do co-writes, but a lot of the songs I'm doing now, I'm doing most of it by myself, and then I get stuck, or I'm like, this needs to be better. I need somebody to come in and give me their, whatever, their take on it, sorry. But, so I usually I'll write a melody first, usually. Sometimes I'll go in with a hook line, like a, chorus idea or whatever. But usually the lyrics come after I have some sort of a melody. But also sometimes people will send me a track, like this guy I'm working with now in Nashville. He sent me a track that I'm trying to write to his track, which is not as easy for me sometimes. I mean, I can do it, but because I always want to go, oh, why is that 6 bars? That should be 4 bars right there. Well, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I like doing it. The way I really like to do is kind of sit down and plunk out some sort of a melody thing, and then sometimes I have lyrics already. I mean, I have books and books that I'll go back and go, that don't sound good there. You know, stuff that I've already written. But that's the way I enjoy doing it the most, because, and then it just sort of takes on its own life.
What instruments do you know how to play?
Piano, but not well.
Yeah.
Enough to get by, and that's it.
Yeah.
Pretty much it.
That's pretty much all you need, I think. I mean, to start to...
Maybe the percussion, maybe some conga drums.
You can do a little bit of the tambourine.
Oh, I do the tambourine.
Right?
I do the tambourine and the shaker.
Right. I love
the
it.
shaker.
I love it.
I played the cowbell a couple times too. Just
Yeah.
so you know. We need
Fucking
more
killing the game
cowbell.
with a cowbell. So, how did the band break up?
The band.
The band.
We're getting the
So
band back
band's
together. We're all 100 years old now. But getting it back together.
Kia, give us a call.
Kia, come on.
Yeah.
She's good. She
Yeah.
actually got me a lot of gigs after we broke
Yeah.
up. Well, what happened was, I'll tell the abbreviated version. So we were going to get re-signed after our first record. It did okay, not well.
Yeah.
The first single did okay. I don't know, maybe in the 50s of the Billboard Top 100, something like that.
Arsenio needed more woo, woo, woo for you guys. Come on, bring it
That
up the
was-
charts.
That was fun, that show. Michael Wolff, he was great, the music director. Anyway, so then they were going to re-sign us, and I just was unhappy with the producers, and so were the other girls, but
Yeah.
I was the one with the big mouth, and so I just said, I'm not doing another record. Because they were like, literally, and this has happened to so many artists, like NSYNC, all these people.
Yeah.
These guys were buying like new houses, and I literally could not pay my electric bill, and that is not an exaggeration. I was like, what
crazy
the?
that-
And we're riding around in limos. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I can't pay my electric bill. Something help me.
Yeah.
And that's really how it was. And I was like, this is not right. So I said, we're not going to do another record unless we get more writing credit or we get to write more. And there's got to be a better split, because they were what they're called double dipping,
Yeah.
where they're producers and managers. You're double dipping into the pot, which
Yeah.
is not cool. Anyway, so we decided, okay, that's what we're going to do. We went to the meeting with the head of Black Music. Hey, everybody's good, and he started talking to us, and so it came down to, well, okay, the next record, da da da. And I said, well, I just want to say something. This is what I think we should do on the next record, da da da. And they were like, no, and I'm like, yeah. And the guy's like, I don't think that's going to work. And I look over at the girls. I'm like, yeah. And they all kind of went. And I went, no. Are you kidding? Like, literally, I was like, all right, then. Well, that's what I want to do. So if you can't do that, then I guess I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
And I left. And
Good for you.
I was just
I
like,
mean,
no, I'm
good
not
for
going to
you.
do this.
Yeah.
This is not right. And they knew it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't need this badly. And then I found out through the grapevine from all the other singers I knew in New York,
Yeah.
they, I think I auditioned for your part or something. They couldn't replace me. They couldn't find anybody. They tried and tried. I heard that many times.
Wow.
I was like, well,
And then the band disbanded after that. Wow.
which is sad. 'Cause
It is sad.
If they would have just hung in there for like 10 minutes, we would
Yeah.
have figured it out.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's not cool. You can't just like,
No. And the other thing, that it's always the worst when, you have the talks with your team or your band or whatever it is, your group collective, and they're like, yeah. And then you go into the meeting and you're like, whoa. And then they're like,
no, I want to keep this job.
I
I'm
know.
like, well, you will keep the job. It'll be
Yeah.
better.
And you won't make any money. And you will literally be, it's crazy, because I do think the music industry has improved in terms of owning your music, right? And having more control.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard with all the internet and all that stuff, but they figured it out.
True. I mean, God, what was it? What was the first Napster? It was Napster.
That's
God.
when what was it? The band that made the big, not Def Leppard. One of the bands had the huge lawsuit against Napster, and it changed everything.
Was it it wasn't Led Zeppelin?
No,
I do know that 30 Seconds to Mars was huge in going into. I mean, they were so screwed over with their own music to a point to where, like, they were trying to figure out how to just sell merchandise to make. It was crazy.
The business is horrible.
It's insane.
It's horrible.
I don't know, but now it's interesting to see, like, where it's going. So you ended up going. You went into backup singing after that?
Well,
Or were you,
yeah, kind of. I did a little background singing with Daryl Hall, and then with Enya. And with Enya, I got to hire a bunch of singers. It was fun. We did Letterman with her, so it's fun.
How was it with her? She always strikes me as like, I mean, I remember the Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman movie that she did the soundtrack.
She's good.
She's amazing. And is she like, is she a diva? Was she soft spoken?
She didn't speak.
She didn't speak.
She was like the most shy part. She was like this tiny little thing.
No way.
And her manager was really nice. I can't remember his name, this guy. Because she's Scottish. No, Irish. But I think she lived in Scotland or something like that. And he's like, yeah, she lives in this big, huge...
What albums did you sing on for her? Because she did that Blue, that she did I know, there's so many...
I didn't even sing on the record. I just did the live show.
You did her live show. Okay.
Stuff. She had never done live stuff.
No way.
No, never. She was like that shy. She had horrible stage fright. Horrible.
Wow, you would never guess. She was so elegant, like in all of her videos with all the like
the whole gowns.
It was gowns, and they did a lot of like sepia and like it looked like there was paints on all of her stuff. My mother, oh my God, my mom was obsessed. I mean, obsessed. We had every Enya album. I think I probably have seen you on TV because every time she was on, she's like, "Oh my God, Enya is on."
I think we did like Rosie O'Donnell's show too.
Oh my God, Rosie O'Donnell and Enya. Now those two, I've never said that in a sentence before. That's amazing.
Look it up.
And then Daryl Hall, like how did that happen?
That's another thing I didn't sing. The record was already done.
Yeah.
But it was his first solo record he ever did. The first one he'd ever done without John Oates. They were still like friends or whatever.
Yeah.
He just wanted to do a solo thing. And actually I knew some of the writers on that record. I had sung a bunch of demos for them. But anyway, Kia somehow got into that gig singing backgrounds. And so she asked me if I wanted to do it. I said, yeah. So we did some like practice shows, which were hilarious, like in these skanky clubs somewhere upstate New York. I don't even know where. And then his like breakout thing was when he was on Arsenio. He did the first single and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And then they did a tour in Europe. I didn't do that. But
what a voice.
He's unbelievable.
What
and
a
writer.
Yeah.
The guy is insane.
I mean, I've always been overwhelmed by the duos. I mean, because at the time, like Daryl Hall, John Oates, Wham, like when you thought of, or like Tears for Fears, like there was some good, like
really good,
like guy duos. I was like, oh.
And those guys, Hall and Oates, it kills me. My 13-year-old, she's known who they were even before they even knew I was even a singer. My kids, I didn't go, I sang with Daryl. They're like, what? Yeah, they knew the songs.
That's cool.
They play all the time.
They do, and they're freaking classics.
Yeah, and they are classics. And the new stuff, I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of new stuff. But.
So when you sing background with artists, I mean, was there any engagement? I mean, Enya apparently didn't talk. So, but like in terms of, but with like Daryl Hall, like, was there any kind of like, I don't know, like. I mean, you get to kind of sort of know them a little bit.
Daryl was pretty cool. Yeah. I talked to him a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but he was cool. And then some of the other people I sang backgrounds was only in the studio, like for Debbie Gibson.
Oh, wow.
Actually, she was Deborah at that time. She got older.
I love it.
But she was really, really sweet, just a really sweet person. And I mean, we sang with Sister Sledge. I don't think were they there when we sang? I don't even know. I think they did the track and then some of us sang on the background. I don't even know. It's been so long.
It must be so interesting too, to like, when I hear you talk about these stories, I mean, for me, I just like eat it up with a spoon because this is this beautiful time in your life where you're creating and you're evolving and you're finding out all these things. And then you're doing something you love, like you're singing, right? Mm-hmm. And most people don't get a chance to be ever on stage at the level you were, let alone work with freaking legends.
Yeah.
So
that was pretty cool.
How was dating and relationships while pursuing this career? What was it like for you?
I don't know. I don't remember very well. Well, I don't, at first I was young and just kind of like this. I had blinders on.
Yeah.
But, I had a couple boyfriends, one when I first moved to New York, who I'm still friends with, and then kind of nobody really after that until I met Carlos Leon, and then we were together for a long time. But that was not, it was fine until I started getting, like, things started happening, and then it was hard for him, because I was never home.
I'm sure. I can't even imagine. And it's so crazy because Carlos Leon was infamously He's Madonna's baby daddy to the beautiful Lourdes. And it's so interesting to think about someone like him kind of being prepped to be with Madonna, because even though your career, obviously when we're looking at Madonna's career, she's like the Oprah of music. Well, I don't know if I want that quoted. People will be like, why did you say that? But essentially,
No, I mean,
she's a godhead, you know.
Yeah.
But you had enough notoriety, you had enough going on in your life to where, like, you know, I can only imagine being like, yeah, my girlfriend's going to be, you know, performing with whoever, or whether it would be even if you were just like with Daryl Hall, it's still like that. Yeah. So how was that, having a relationship? Because you guys were together for like 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. It was, you know, he was fine.
Was he moving and shaking too? What was he doing at the time? Was he wasn't doing too much?
Well, you know, he had a job.
Yeah.
He, you know, he wanted to be at work at the gym or Crunch or something like that.
How did you meet him anyway? You're like, I don't want to tell
on the
you.
corner of 79th and Broadway. I'm not even kidding.
I love that.
Yeah.
It was like a bodega or something like that. That's crazy.
It was one of those, like, you know.
Yeah.
Looking. Okay. And then I think I left and then went back.
That's
like, I forgot something. Oh,
yeah.
bullshit.
Well, he's a very handsome man.
He was cute. Yeah.
Yeah. Enough to where Madonna decided that she was going to take that away from you.
Yes.
So how was that? Was that completely bizarre to be like?
Yeah. Actually, yes and no.
Did it happen overnight? Like, were you in a relationship with him and then all of a sudden it was like, and you're with Madonna?
Well, kind of. I guess he'd been seeing her. I didn't know, whatever. But I had already decided I pretty much wanted to leave that relationship anyway. But, you know, on good terms. We were on good terms. We didn't hate each other or anything like that. But he would, you know, tell me he'd see her in the park running or whatever. And I'm like, okay, she must be pretty or whatever. And he's like, you know. And then somebody kept calling my house and hanging up on me incessantly. And that's not an exaggeration. I remember because I had like hurt my ankle really badly, so I had to get up every time the freaking phone. This was before. Well, I didn't have a cell phone back then.
Yeah,
and,
landline.
Yeah, the landline. I was like, damn, I gotta get up.
Bring.
Yeah, and I'm
bring.
It's a long cord, you know. And so anyway, I remember telling him, tell your little girlfriend, whoever it is, to stop calling me.
Yeah.
And then he kind of like told me it was her, and I was like, and then he's like. And I knew it was. I mean, I didn't know, but when he said it, I knew. He's like, I'm just kidding. I'm like, whatever. I knew. Yeah. I just knew. And then I was like, whatever. If that's what you want, that's fine.
I can't even imagine though, like my confidence. I mean, right now, I guess I'm trying to think now with my husband, if he left me for someone like, I don't know, like Penelope Cruz, but that wouldn't happen because Javier Bardem and them are pretty tight. But like Charlize Theron or something, I can only imagine being like, bring. Hello? And then I hear, is that Charlize Theron? Like, I can't even freaking imagine. I can't even imagine that feeling. So, I mean, you had to have some pretty, like, confidence cojones to not have your world shaken. Because my world would be turned upside down if Madonna took my husband.
It was in
or boyfriend away.
Yeah,
you know,
it was in a way, but it wasn't that. You know, I was like so distraught because he was. I was already moving on, basically.
Yeah,
you know, and but I still cared about him, and you know, I loved him. The worst part was just that it was just everywhere I turned. It was every magazine, every talk show, it was annoyingly annoying.
Yeah.
And they kept making stuff up about me, just dumb stuff like, oh, you know, she broke up their engagement. I'm like, well, if we were ever engaged, maybe she did, but we never were, so I don't know where they got that.
Yeah.
And I remember the day People magazine called me. I was temping at HBO, doing a temp job, and they called me and told me, so did you know that your boyfriend was dating Madonna? And I'm like, really? Kind of.
Yeah.
And they're like, and asked me all these questions, and I was like, okay. And then it just went on, and like, then it got to the point where some things happened. I ran into Carlos a couple times, and I was fine with him. My twin sister, on the other hand, was unhappy with him.
Of course.
So she's pretty verbal. So something happened between those two, and then Madonna called me, and I wasn't home, and she left me not a nice message at all. And I was like, well, give me your number. I'll call you back. Never did. But I didn't leak it to the press or anything, but I told one person, and she must have leaked it to the press, because the next thing I know, the New York Post is all over it, calling every newspaper.
Oh my God.
Everybody wanted it. And then I got all the calls about wanting to give me all kinds of money to give them that, because it was the days of the cassette tape.
Yeah.
You know, the old voice answering machines. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that.
It's so interesting too, because, you know, the way you're describing is you were pretty much on the outs with them anyway.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting how press and everyone wants to make a story, right? Because Madonna is kind of at that time, I remember as a young woman who idolized her. She was the epitome of like, I don't need a man. I don't want a man. And then all of a sudden, this really good looking man, it broke the mold in her. Mm-hmm. She wanted to be with him. And she was with him. I think it was her longest relationship publicly for a while.
I don't know, probably. Yeah. I remember everybody would say, oh, she's just going to like drop him. And I said, no, I have a feeling they're going to get married and have a baby. I was wrong about the marriage part. Yeah. But I don't know why. I just knew.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
And it was crazy. I mean, when I look back at it now, I mean, at the time it was just kind of surreal. But it was what it was. You know what I mean?
So from that point, where did Adam come into the picture?
Adam. Let's see. Carlos and I were broken up. I was broken up. I don't know. Let me think. I met Adam when I was like 32, maybe. So it'd been a couple of years. And I was doing my own project. I was trying to get a solo deal. I was writing, not as much. I was writing a little bit. And so I met him. One of the gigs I was doing, it must have been Enya, and the producers of the show said, we want you to meet some people in the industry, because I was like, had to put all the singers together, so I was kind of like the production team kind of thing too, actually, and one of the singers. So we went to a party at ICM, which is a big talent agency, International Creative Management. Mm-hmm. Big talent agency for actors and musicians and everybody, and it was their Christmas party, and Adam at that time was an agent there for soundtracks and stuff like that. So I met him at that party. And then he decided, I said, well, maybe we could work together, you know, because he's like, I'm a producer and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, sure you are. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So, agents, producers, I don't know about that. Agents were kind of like,
yeah.
But he turned out to be a nice agent. And anyway, so we started working together a little bit on my project. And then, the rest is history. You know, we got married. And, so we did work together a little bit. Wrote a little bit together, not much.
Yeah.
And then he moved out to LA for a while, and then moved back to New York, and then we got married and stuff.
So what happened when you decided to when you became a mother? Like, mm-hmm. What happened with your music career? How did life change?
Life changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was 37 when I had my first child. So, I mean, I was still singing. I was writing, and I was still doing some studio work, not a lot. But I met a lot of writers because they would hire me all the time to sing their demos for other artists. So that's how I got to know a lot of writers. Because at the time, I wasn't known as a writer. They just knew me as a singer. So it was fun, though, because, you know, I'd go in and they'd give you the song, I'd listen to it, I'd learn it. We do like 3 songs or whatever for Britney or for this one or for that one.
Was there any songs that like stand out, like that you're like, wow, that became like a huge hit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
not that it became a huge hit that I demoed, I don't think, but there was a couple writers that
really blew up.
Yeah,
it
was Carl Sturck and Evan Rogers and Carl Sturck, and they're amazing duo. They've written for everybody, and just some other guys. But anyway, so I was still doing that a little bit. And I remember demoing one of my songs, Pregnant Out to Here.
Oh, my God.
I could barely even move, I remember.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to sit down and sing this.
Does it change your voice
at all? It did a little bit. Yeah. Well, I mean, because your breathing is inhibited because you got...
I mean, I would guess that's so crazy. Yeah.
And I felt like everything was up here, you know. But it was fun. And then I kind of, you know, laid off of music for a while when she was little. And then we moved to Florida, and it kind of like I was disconnected, it felt like.
Yeah.
So I didn't like that, but I wanted to be there for my kids. My daughter, one at the time, and then never planned on having another.
Yeah.
But at 42, had another one.
That's so crazy. And that's the other thing that we really bonded over is I shared a lot in the last, I don't know, 5 years since I've been back in Kansas City and I got married of, I've always wanted to be a mother. And I would talk to my class about just like my body and how it's changing and how I'm like, will I ever get pregnant? And, I'm not, obviously I'm now 43 years old. Don't know. I think that ship has sailed, but,
Not necessarily.
who knows? Maybe. But, what I loved was you really offered up of yourself of like, yeah, this happened for me later on in life and it can totally happen. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have any, I know you like resentment's the worst thing to say because like children are the most amazing thing that happens to people for most because, you create this life and you get to like have this legacy, right? But then it can also be something that, kind of stops you dead in your tracks, especially if you're doing something like music or performance. It's just different. You've got to pay attention and raise these little beings. Talk to me a little bit about the emotions and walking away from music.
Well, you can't be selfish anymore.
Yeah.
I was very selfish. I mean, most artists are.
Yeah.
It's all about you.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it goes. But in fact, I remember saying that once, I can't have kids, I'm too selfish.
Yeah.
But I knew I could do it. And it was hard, not at first. I didn't miss it. I was like, I don't care. I'm done. I was done. I didn't miss performing that much. I always missed writing, which I could have still been doing. But, you get caught up in all kinds of things when you're a new mom. I mean, or even an old mom, you know what I mean? You just got all these other responsibilities you have to keep track of. Yeah. You're like, I don't want to do that right now. So, I didn't resent. I never would say I resented it. The only thing that was kind of hard was that, Adam was at that time producing other bands and like, so there were guys coming out recording stuff and, everybody was, and I did sing on a lot of their records, but,
yeah.
Watching that and he's getting to do all this stuff and I'm staying home with the kids.
Yeah.
Yay. He was traveling and, even when we moved to Vancouver for a while, he had a nice job and I just was like, ugh. So, but, you make the choice. I made the choices.
Yeah. And you have 2 amazing daughters.
Thank you.
Have either of them shown interest in music?
Oh, yeah. They
Very
did.
Cool.
They do like theater, a little musical theater stuff.
That's
like
so
it.
cool.
What are they? Pretty good.
What do they think about Mama's Past? R&B.
They think it's hilarious. Actually,
yeah, I love it. I love it.
The first time I showed my older daughter the video, this was when she was like in 6th grade. I mean, I don't even think I ever mentioned to them that I sang. I don't even.
That's
just
so
really
crazy.
Didn't even come across. Like they knew Daddy played guitar because we had 17 of them in the house, or more.
Yeah.
But so I said, I just want you to watch this thing. And Cece's like, my older one's name is Cece. She's sitting there and she's like, wait a minute, Mom? And I go, yeah. She goes, I go, yeah, that was Mom. She's like, no way. Calling her friends. It was hilarious. Is that your hair?
I know, right? That was my first one. I was like, damn, that girl had some hair.
So it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Now it's great because I'll write something or I'll be warming up for whatever gig I was doing like recently and I'll be like, do you guys like that? I'm always asking their opinion. Listen to this. Do you think this is any good? And I think sometimes I'm like, they must be like, stop asking me.
That's so funny.
But they, they loved it. And I never pushed it on them at all. In fact, neither of them wanted anything to do with music until we moved here. And then my oldest one was a sophomore in high school. And all of a sudden she goes, I'm going to try out for the musical. And I go, who are you?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're going to try? Okay.
Yeah.
And that was it. And she fell in love with it. And,
Oh, my gosh. So why did you, I mean, I know the reason why, but I want our listeners, I guess, to know that the reason why you left Vancouver and came to Kansas City.
I'm not happy about that. I really wanted to stay. Well, Adam was working for a manager there, a pretty well-known manager. Used to manage like Nora Jones and a lot of Canadian acts. And he, was trying to get some of these deals closed with other artists, and it just didn't really happen. So kind of got out the door kind of thing. And I was like, no, I'm not going back to New York. I'm staying. It's kind of what I wanted to do. And I remember I went to LA for like a month to stay with my sister because I literally didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
Just because I finally didn't have to find somewhere to go when it was freezing cold out in New York City without paying $100 to take my 2-year-old, which is what you had to do. And Barnes & Noble got old very quickly.
Yeah,
so.
no kidding.
And I was driving. I'm like, oh my God, I have a car.
Yeah.
Like been so long since I had driven anywhere. So it was hard, but that's a great place.
Yeah. I've heard gorgeous.
Unbelievable.
I've heard it's gorgeous, and it's just very cool. And so many creatives.
Oh my God. I just spoke to one of the guys that my husband, his band, signed his band years ago. And then this guy, Brian Howes, went on to do amazing things. Like it's written for Daughtry and Nickelback and all kinds. He's an amazing writer. And
that's so cool.
He and I were going to maybe try and do some work now. But I was just talking to him a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I miss it so much. I haven't even been back. I need to go back and see it. But
it's crazy because the one thing that, as we're sitting here and talking, it's so crazy how the first part of your life, and especially your story with Adam, and just how you guys, even with the girls, everything feels so great. Like you hear these stories and you're like, oh my God, well, you've lived so much life and it's so great. And then this illness comes into Adam's life. Mm-hmm. When was he first diagnosed with? He had early onset, is it?
He was first diagnosed he was 53. But he was diagnosed with what they call frontal temporal dementia. It's also called Pick's disease, like P-I-C-K. I think it was the doctor who developed or found it. And so, and one of the reasons was because he was so young. It hits people very young, frontal temporal. It can hit in their 40s. A lot of times it happens after an injury. You'll get frontal temporal dementia, like a head injury.
Has he ever had one that you could remember?
Yeah. He was in a car accident, but he had no concussion or anything like that.
How did it show up first?
So he was 53, but I had seen signs a year before that. Started seeing signs. At first it was little things. Just, I'd noticed he'd be doing something on the computer and it was taking him really long time. I'm like, are you still doing, but they were subtle things. Or I would say, I'd tell him something and then later on I'd reference back to that. Oh, you never told me that. I go, yes, I did. And that went on. I kept saying, I told you that. And he's like, I just don't listen to you because you're my wife. I'm like, that's probably the truth too. You have selective hearing. So I just kind of went with that. And then it got more intense where, he did one time was really scary because he went to pick up our daughter she was in high school, her first year in high school, and she had taken this bus because it was kind of far from her house. Picked her up where they dropped her off, and I said, I was in a meeting, and I said, can you go grab Cece? Sure. So he shows up at the place, and there was like a Dunkin' Donuts right there or something. So she goes up to him and says, Dad, I'm just going to go get something to drink. He said, okay, I'll be right back. She goes in there, she comes back out.
And he's gone.
Mm-hmm. And she calls me, I'm like, what's the matter? She's like, well, Dad was here and now he's not. And I don't know why he left. And I was like, oh, crap. So I call him and he's like, what do you mean? I wasn't there. I was supposed to pick her up. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
That scared me a lot right there because it was like he didn't even realize, So that was interesting. And that was kind of when I said, no more driving for you.
Yeah. Was there denial ever? For instance, I would think, if I hadn't noticed the tics, maybe he was lying to me.
I didn't feel like he was lying to me.
Yeah.
But I started seeing that happen. And then other things, he would come into a room and he would start telling me something in the middle of a story.
Yeah.
And then we went to the dinner and I'm like, wait, hold on a second.
Yeah.
And I do remember catching myself saying, I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Why am I so confused? I'm always so confused when I'm talking to him. Yeah. And then I finally realized I'm saying that a lot. And why am I saying that all the time? Because I was so confused because it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then it got even worse. And later on, I asked a couple of my friends, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we all thought like he was doing some drugs or something." I mean, people are telling me lately, even like a week ago, a guy that he was in a band with said, "I thought he was just like off his rocker on some sort of."
Interesting. So when did it show up when he was in music and
that's another thing. Like he was working with another friend, and I wasn't usually in the studio with them all the time when they were doing their project. But Dan, his friend Dan, told me, "Oh my God," he was like, "I was like, what is he doing? Like, why is he trying to do that right now? Like in the studio?" Because he was engineering it too. Adam was. And I noticed he and I did a project with a young girl kind of right before we moved here, and I was like, "What the hell is he doing?" Like, I mean, it was before he was diagnosed, but like not long before that. And I knew. I mean, talk about denial. I was the one who was less like, this can't be happening.
No, I'm sure.
This is not happening to me.
I'm sure.
Because I knew in my gut that it was, I knew it was true. And his mom had Alzheimer's, but not early onset. So he wasn't even initially diagnosed with that. Then we came here after he was diagnosed with a frontal temporal, and I saw another doctor here. And they said, well, we think he's probably got early onset Alzheimer's, which he probably has both. I mean, he's recently been diagnosed with the frontal temporal again. And it's, they both move really fast because when you're younger, it just moves twice as fast for some reason. The doctors don't know why. And, there's nothing you can do for either. So, I mean, it's kind of like, does it really matter what he has? But
when you were told this diagnosis, right? What was your initial thoughts of processing it? And then when did it really hit you of what it was?
Well, I remember he had to go in and take like, 5 or 6 hours of like psych testing kind of stuff, at this doctor. And then it took like a week or so later, and she called us in her office. And we're just sitting there, and he was just pissed off at everybody and everything, and especially that doctor, because he didn't want to take those tests and actually had to go back and do something else. But anyway, he was just in denial, and of course he was. I mean, I would be too. And she just said, well, he's sitting right there, which kind of made me mad. She's like, well, Adam has dementia. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? He has Alzheimer's, early onset? What is it? Well, we don't know exactly yet. He has to see a neurologist before we can really sort of get a better handle on it, what he has. And then she says, I'll never forget this, you need to get your affairs in order. I'm like, what, is he going to die next week? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
What? And I knew that, I took that with a grain of salt. But I just sat there and just kind of, teared up a little bit and kind of looked at him, and he just didn't even say anything. And it was, I can't say I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't. But it was surreal. And then it just became more and more surreal the worse he got.
Yeah.
You'd think it'd become more of like you get used to it, but you just don't.
No. And
it changes all the time.
It's so weird now to be sitting across from you, being your friend now for going into like the third year. We're like 2 years in, I think, of being friends. And as someone who observed Adam when I first met him, fine. Like you thought he was maybe a little forgetful. He was a little scattered, but for the most part. And then watching this decline happen and not understanding like how it happens. I guess when I'm sitting here across from you now, was there ever a time that you thought maybe he's getting better?
No.
Yeah. Is it, and that's the thing is that I have the reference of The Notebook with Ryan Gosling as like, that's my go-to Alzheimer's film. And it's so romantic, and it's so like, if it's the perfect decline, and they lay together, and there's the only pain is that the memories are going, but they don't tell you the stories that when we sat down and you had the courage to tell me about. I was so curious, and I can't even tell you enough. Thank you for sharing them with me, because there were times where I didn't know if I could hold the space. But now, as we're talking, I think it would be nice, not nice, because again, we're talking about a very sad kind of disintegration of the brain, but also it would be good to inform listeners about what it really looks like and what it feels like, and what giving people a little bit of a roadmap of if they have it, things to look for, if they have it in their family background. So talk to me a little bit about if someone could have given you advice ahead of time, or things to look for, things they don't tell you.
Well, the frontal temporal is a little different than early onset, but at the beginning they're about the same, I think, kind of. But so, I mean, I guess if you find yourself saying, I'm so confused all the time, that's a good sign. Maybe it's me. Am I just that stupid? Or your husband says, I'm just not listening to you. That's pretty much it. I mean, I have to laugh about it because.
No, we've had a lot of laughs about some really morbid things.
I mean, anyway, so the sign, I mean, it's hard because it's different with everybody, but like a lot of people think Alzheimer's is memory, period. And that's just a small part of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of confusion. It's a lot of things. It's different with everybody. That's in early onset's different from normal age Alzheimer's. It just is. It moves twice as fast. It just affects people differently. Plus you have the added stress of when you're younger, and like, I had my kids later, but they were like 9 and 13 or something. I mean, so then you got that stress added onto it. But as far as the signs, I mean, I guess, the normal ones, like maybe forgetting stuff, but that's not what I remember. I remember more the confusion, like him going to pick her up and like leaving, that kind of stuff. And also like when he'd be driving, he would start panicking, like if there was, like we'd get to a stoplight and be a green arrow, and we'd sit there and I'm like, you need to turn, it's green. And he's like, well, what do I don't know what I'm like, what do you mean just turn the freaking car? What? And then we almost got killed a couple times. I was like, no, thank, no more of that driving. And he was actually handled that quite well.
Yeah.
Not driving. Yeah. But so, I mean, it's hard to say, but like, I don't know. For me, it was just a gut thing. I just kind of knew. But if other people are telling you stuff too, like a lot of them didn't tell me this right away. One of my very good friends did, because she's a good friend of mine. And I had said something to her, like, Adam's acting kind of weird. I mean, have you noticed anything? And she told me. I mean, listen, because if other people are really picking up on stuff, then, you know, you kind of got to, and it can be anything. It can be confusion. That was a big one for Adam. And just like the other stuff came much later, but like when we first went to his primary care, before we even went to the neurologist and stuff, they asked him to like draw a clock. They always ask him to draw a clock. Well, he drew a circle and then I think a line, and I was like, all right, not a clock. Next. Yeah. And they were like they asked him what, I think he knew the day. He didn't know the month, I don't think, but then they asked him to write a sentence. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And technically it's a sentence, but he wrote play guitar. I was like, well, technically that's a sentence.
Yeah.
But so,
Yeah.
And then even by the next time we came up like for a follow-up at that same doctor, they were like, okay, a lot worse this time. I mean, it just went so fast. Like he couldn't draw any kind of clock. They asked him to count backwards. I got to admit, some of the stuff they'd asked, I was like, wait a second, how do I can't even do the alphabet backwards. I can't. I was like, don't ask him to, or spell something. Yeah. I was like, don't ask him that. I can do that. But, so there's just stuff, it's hard to say. I wish I had better advice, but I guess just listen to your instincts, if you know. And if there's a family member that can make a difference. Yeah. Definitely. Early onset's different, but they don't know if it's, they don't know if it's really hereditary. There's like a different genes they've found that only early onset Alzheimer's patients have. And the thing about early onset that's hard is that there's very little information about it. Yeah. They don't do hardly any studies. I don't know why. God,
that's so crazy
to
me.
Me. Because it's a small portion of, still it's rare. It's not as rare because people are talking about it now, but it's a small portion of the, the Alzheimer's community, very small. Yeah. And, doesn't mean those of us that are in that hell don't need help,
Definitely.
And, you just, I don't know.
No, I it's interesting because starting this conversation with you and now here, this pausing point, because we will pause here for a brief break. What I'm fascinated by is just this timeline of your life and being able to bear witness of you in literally what I consider like the dark ages and coming into a renaissance in your life. And I can't wait to talk about it more, but we're going to pause here for a second and see us on the other side. We are back with the Seraphine podcast with my dear friend, Sally Walked.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We took a little break. We did a little photo shoot.
Yes.
Just to kind of, because we're getting into what I call like the meat and potatoes part of life, the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
So we had spoke about Sally's career and this amazing life that she lived in New York with the music industry, and a little bit about the love life, a little gossip. We even name dropped a few people like Madonna,
just a couple,
Daryl Hall, and and it's fun. I love that, but there's also the reality of people's lives that start to come in, and you fell in love with a great guy, and I've had a lot of nice interactions with him, and now. Coming back full circle to our conversation of diving a little bit deeper, because Adam was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and the frontal
temporal dementia.
Yeah. So
FTD.
So now, as we go back into this conversation, her and I have always had a way to have conversation about some. It's sadness. It is sadness, and processing it and doing it with a little bit of laughter and optimism. And I guess as we go back into this conversation, we both were like, okay, let's go back. But I really think it's important for my viewers and listeners. They get to speak to someone who has really been through it. And there's not a lot of people who talk about what it's like and all the painful things that go hand in hand with turning from a wife into a caregiver, and what that does and to you and what it looks like. So as we go back where we left off to things that people don't maybe talk about that happens, you noticed some things with his memory. Obviously, that's the first thing that everybody goes to. But then him leaving your daughter, behind and being like, what, where, what? I don't remember that. Are there any things that come to mind else that you would want to share?
Yeah, things like for a long time, he, especially when we moved here, but it started before we moved here, but kind of when we first were like looking at houses and things like that, he didn't know how to leave the house. Like we'd say, okay, we're gonna go now, and everybody'd walk out, and he would shut the door and stay inside. I mean, things like that kind of confusion. He wouldn't know how to, just go anywhere. He never knows how to never knew how to get in the car ever. He just walk around the car and just kind of stand there. Things like that. You wouldn't think somebody with Alzheimer's doesn't know how to get in the car, but that's what happens sometimes. And my poor kids, he's driving them crazy. We've been trying to go somewhere. They're like, Dad, just get in the car. I'm like, honey, just get in the car. I have to go over there and open the door and tell him where to sit. And then a lot of times we'd park. Okay, we're all getting out, and he'd put his seatbelt back on and just sit there. I'm like, no, we're getting out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes weird.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And then the other thing is that it's this patience, and then also having people who have no clue what you're going through, and then watching your patience being tried and silently judging you and not knowing what you're experiencing. So talk to that a little bit.
I felt the judging. Yeah. Well, like to say I have a lot of patience, but I don't think that's really true about me. But it is extremely hard. It tries every ounce of patience that you have. And like from not being able to get in the car to any time I try to go to the grocery store. I mean, he's a toddler that you can't put in a stroller and tell him to shut up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You just can't. So, I mean, it would take forever, and he'd get lost in the store, and I'd be, one time we were in Whole Foods, and he wasn't, I knew where he was right there, and this woman was like standing next to me, and I was looking at something on the shelf, and he just started taking things out of her cart. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. She's like, "No, it's okay." And I was like, "Adam, no, that's not ours." And he was just kind of like, he didn't know what to do. Yeah. And then a couple of times at Trader Joe's while we were checking out, or I was checking out, he would just start taking things and take them with him. Yeah. And I realized one time he had taken something like candy or chocolate or something like that. I'm running back there. "I'm so sorry." Yeah. And they're like, "It's okay." And I said, "No, he doesn't understand it." And they're like, "Oh, it's okay." People are usually pretty gracious about it. Yeah. When people see me getting very frustrated and annoyed at things, and I'm sure they think I'm like this crazy lady, which that's okay if they think that, but it is very hard. It's I don't even know how to explain it. And it changes all the time. Like you think you got to, okay, I know he's going to do this, and then does something different the next day, and it just gets worse.
How did you find grace for yourself?
Well, I had it in the heart. Well, I did try and find grace, and I just take a lot of deep breaths, and I would go down in my basement and cry for a while, take some deep breaths and say, "I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore." Yes, you can, and you will, and go back upstairs. And that would help. That would help me out some, because I just, there's no rule book here. You know what I mean? There's it's not even like you can take him to the doctor and they say, "Okay, let's try this medicine," or "Let's try that." There's nothing to do. Yeah. You can't even try anything. Yeah. They give you the Aricept and that lasts for a little bit, but it only kind of slows down the symptoms. It really doesn't do a lot. I mean, it does a little, but so you feel very, I would always say I felt like I was drowning most of the time. Yeah. And then I always felt like I was just on an island out there, not knowing what the hell to do or where to go or how to get there. Yeah. And then I kept thinking, well, he doesn't understand that he doesn't get it, but like he's got it so much worse than me. When you think about it like that, like I'd feel guilty saying, "Oh my God, I can't do this," and he's driving me crazy and all that stuff, because he was driving me crazy, and I was not great about handling it most of the time. And people would say, "Well, he doesn't mean." I'm like, I know that. Are you kidding me? I know that. That kind of stuff drove me nuts. Oh, because I'm like, really? He doesn't mean it?
Yeah, everybody's an expert too. It's crazy how
it's hard.
And I think the other thing that's hard is when people know the person before.
They're the people that knew him before,
and then they don't know him now. Mm-mm. And I think that was as a person who was new to your life, and I had no history with him. I had no history with you. So I was really just becoming your friends at a time where it was the dark, it was like the dark ages of the relationship, but then also really, really processing of how to navigate a friendship that you're watching like change, and know that like it's new to you. Like you're trying to figure, each day is new for you. Mm-hmm. And then also knowing that like there are days that I just can't help other than just being there,
Yeah. And I found hard too. I wanted to say, for me, this was hard. Like in the beginning ish, when we lived here, and he was, there would be times where he would just sit there and like maybe say something to someone or whatever. But then if I left or something, like say we're at a kids volleyball game or something, I leave to go to the bathroom, and then I come back and I see him doing like, I don't know, talking to somebody, I would get freaked out, panicked. Oh my God, I gotta go over there and like save the day, because they probably think, what the hell is he talking? This is a lot in my own head, because sometimes it was probably fine-ish. Yeah. And people just kind of laugh. They had no idea what was going on. Yeah. But for me, it was not great. I had big anxiety about that. And you know, people are like, well, it's okay. And I'm like, it's not okay. You know, I didn't want him to look like an idiot. Literally. That's
100%.
I remember one guy when we first moved here, Adam, like, he talks to everybody, my husband.
Yeah.
And he was asking some guy something, and the guy's like, oh, yeah, well, I'll just give you my number, and I'll just put it in your phone or something like that. And Adam's like...
So the fun part about doing your podcast is if you film it in your house, sometimes the doorbell rings during really heavy conversation.
Yeah, like Mr. Rogers.
Right? But it does. It kind of like, I can always tell because you and I, like I said, we can go there, but there are times where we just need to like, whoo.
Yeah.
All right.
Take a minute.
Yeah.
It gets heavy. It gets heavy.
So in terms of your daughters, how do you even have a conversation about, hey, dad's losing his mind?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like?
Well, it's hard. I mean, it's, once again, no rule book.
Yeah.
And, you know, the hard part is it's like I'm going through it with them. Yes, I'm an adult, but I don't have the answers. I don't have, you know what I mean? Like, I can't say, well, this is what we're going to try now, and then it'll be okay for a while, and then you guys will do this and that. I mean, I just don't even. So I just try to, you know, console them, but I've never hidden anything from them at all.
Yeah.
Like, because why? You know, I mean, I didn't blab them everything like when he was first diagnosed, but, you know, they saw it.
Yeah.
So they've seen everything. And when, you know, when it got so bad at home, you know, the hallucinations were bad. That was really hard. And when he like didn't know who they were a couple times, and then, you know, you'd have long conversations with their photographs, like on the
and in the mirror. That was
the mirror thing was big.
That was for me. I think when you described that to me, I had a huge reaction to that just internally, because I can't imagine. You know, you see it depicted when people talk to themselves, usually in movies where like they're going to come after you, like, and kill you. Like it's crazy. It's scary.
People.
Yeah. So when you first described it to me, I only imagine how scary, number one, it would be to look at your mate and he's looking in a mirror or he's having a conversation with a picture, and then the responsibility of making sure that he's not of danger to himself, and then your daughter's processing that and making sure that there's no danger to them. So when you're in that situation, was it something that is it like waking someone out of a dream? Or he doesn't wake up, right? So it's not...
Like he would... You know, he'd look in the mirror, he'd be talking, and it started because he kept telling me that there was this guy, and he was having like these panic attacks. I'm like, what guy? There's no guy, honey, it's okay. No guy. And then I realized, I think one of my daughters said to me, I think it was my older daughter, said, Mom, he doesn't know that that's him. And I was like, what? She figured it out. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. He has no idea who he thinks it's someone else that's coming to get us and all this stuff. And so that was weird. But my daughters are pretty intuitive like that. The hardest part was, and it wasn't so much for the older one, but for my younger daughter, Miller, she was so embarrassed. Like, because a couple times it just happens. There's no, you know, you don't know when it's going to happen. And she'd have a friend over or something, and she was just looking at me like, Mom. And I was like, okay. And I'm trying to figure out, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know?
And you can't control it. You can't control it.
And so that was hard. And then, you know, before it got violent, you know, then it was, you know, you just kind of get used to it. I mean, and it wasn't just mirrors. It was any car window, any reflection of himself anywhere. Yeah. So, like, we'd go over to my brother's house to swim or something. And he had, you know, sliding glass doors. And Adam would spend most of the time talking to the person there that wasn't there. So we all just kind of were like, okay. The girls were, you know, it's weird.
When did you know that you could no longer take care of him?
When he started, he wasn't completely incontinent, but he started just peeing everywhere. I could handle that, but it was not fun. But with the hallucinations, he started seeing other men in the mirror and in the in his reflection, and these men wanted to be with me, and so he got very, very angry, upset. You know, started being physically abusive to me, you know.
Yeah.
And I took it. I mean, took it as long as I could until I was just like, I can't do this. I mean,
well, and
I'm
he's
scared.
a big man.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is he's a big man.
Yeah.
So in a fight, he wins.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is that you can't get to him because he's not
There's no
there.
reasoning.
There's
Yeah.
no reasoning. And then on top of it, I think the other thing that panics in no matter what kind of altercation you're in is if you have a loved one and you know that you call like authorities or something, then it's out of your control completely because you don't know if they're going to take him somewhere and how you can get him out. And then I guess when you decided that you needed help, what was the response from the people around you who weren't in your everyday life? Did you get pushback?
Not so much, especially with like my family here because they'd seen it, but like some of his friends in New York and stuff. They tried, but one of them was like, why can't you just get, someone to come in every day? And I said, because then he's still there all night, and that's what he would keep me up all night and be spitting at me. And I said, I'm going to make this decision. I had, that was like that, not with most of them, but this one also, this friend had not seen him for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, when was the last time you saw him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's changed. And I'd sometimes send them videos, which I always felt really weird about doing.
Yeah.
But I thought, you guys should know.
You need to see.
You need to see how his disease is progressing just because you're such good friends with him. He has some really good friends, and they were cool about it. I always felt weird, but I thought, well, also because when I try to explain it.
Well, no, it doesn't make sense.
No.
And I mean, as your friend who has watched him decline, until you are in observation of it, there is no way that you can understand it at all.
No,
I mean,
can't.
unless you have had past history or you've watched maybe someone with dementia, but even dementia it's an older person. I mean, Adam's just a few years older than my husband. So it's hard to process when you look at a younger man's face and he's not there. And it's scary.
It is scary.
And I also had been in a few moments with you to where you want to help and you don't know how to help, and then you're trying to have a conversation and kind of act like again
You're trying to make reason out of there's no
totally
reason,
and you can't pretend it away. You just can't.
You can't act like it's not there.
Totally.
I remember that day at the pool one time, and that was just, I mean, it's weird.
And you face a lot of things as a friend. And I think that's the one thing that I want to share is if you ever have a friend who's going through something like this, it is the worst feeling in the world to look the other way. There's so much shame in that. And I've realized in the last couple of years, and especially with our friendship, of sitting in front of you and being like, I don't know how to show up for you, but I want to show up for you. And I want to meet your gaze, and I want to be able to look at you and not be like, oh, I feel so sorry for you.
Yeah.
Or what can I do to help? Like there is no right way to show up as a friend either. And all you can do is say, I don't know what you're feeling. I know that you're going through something. I want to help you, but this is heavy shit. It's heavy. Really heavy shit. And it is to watch a friend go through it and know you're powerless is sometimes enough where people walk away. And that, I will tell you, don't walk away from your friend. Be there and just let them know, like,
just that you're there.
That you're there.
And you're not judging.
No.
And like when he would get, even when he was already in one of the home he's in now, he'd get violent with the AIDS and people like that, and one time my sister was there and we were trying to change him, and he's done it with me. I was used to it because, and I was just like, even though he was strong as hell, but like my sister just didn't get it, and she was trying to tell them, oh, he can do that. I said, no, he can't. No, stop. you know, and I adore her. And she didn't mean anything other than she was trying to help. And I said, no, just no. And you hate doing that, but, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just, just so people know, I think, the caregivers, if they just know that you're there and then you just go, what can I do? And just say nothing or just hang out until I figure this out or don't figure it out or move on or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it was good because when I would get so undone, you know, which happened a lot, so if there was someone else there that knew him, or even if it was one of the girls at the hospital or something, you know, they would take him, you know, and take him for a walk or whatever, and I'd just go breathe or whatever, try and become human again, because I felt like I was just, you know, just spiraling down.
Oh, yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
But the caregiving thing is tough. It's no joke. Like,
it isn't.
It's hard. It's not my forte at all. But, you know, it's, even when I went to a couple of support groups, which were good. There was one other woman whose husband was young, but the rest of them were in early stages and they were older and they were fine. But like, I was like, that's been going on for like 2 years already. But it's kind of comforting to know that they understood mostly, you know what I mean? And it is a good thing. I mean, I think that that's important. But even sometimes there you're like, I don't even know why I'm talking about it. You know, because like, what's the point?
I think the one moment that really stands out in my mind of when I just felt like, wow, like you have got some kind of will in you, is the day that you showed up on my doorstep during COVID, and just knowing I had a long day and I had just been like, I had family stuff going on, and it was one of those moments of she had called me on the phone, and me and my husband were about to sit down to dinner, and I'm like, I feel so bad I'm not answering this, but I've got to finish dinner. And then the door knocks, and then I see her. And I had this moment where the flood of shame and the flood of guilt came over me, because I was like, I didn't pick up the phone.
Oh my God.
And then all of a sudden, that's the thing about friendship, is that you show up for people. And I saw the look on your face. And
but I was like, I just wanted to drop this off.
Totally. But you had like your gutters, like that day.
Like the day of the,
everything had gone wrong for her.
Everything in that house.
And then on top of it, imagine you're in COVID, right? You have this person who's been like the love of your life for
almost
XYZ,
20 years.
20 years.
Married 20 years this year.
And he had just recently been hospitalized. It had been what? Like
the second one.
The second one.
Yeah,
but this was
home. So he had moved in there January 24th.
Yeah.
So a month and a few days.
And you had seen him pretty regularly, like you were going in a lot.
Almost every day.
And then COVID happens, and then they go, guess what? You don't get to come in and visit.
At all. Since March 11th.
And he already forgets. He doesn't even know where he's at. Mm-hmm. And then there's this feeling of like checking in and being like, you still see me. There's still a little light there. Mm-hmm. And then being told, no, you don't get to see him anymore. And good luck when you see him next. Yeah. You know, I just remember us sitting down and me thinking about all my little, at that now, all my problems seem so fucking small. And then listening to you and us laughing. We laughed over something that, you know, nobody wants to talk about, is when people, they are incontinent, and we were both tired, and my heart, we were in all of our feelings, and we just made a joke about like literally swimming in shit, and us like crying and laughing, and me just having this moment with you to where it was like, I don't know, like my respect level for you and my capacity of just like knowing I needed to show up more in just life in general, and not being afraid, because life is about suffering, and you got to go through the shit literally to come out on the other side.
Yep.
And it's such a relief, because, you know, after we came out of COVID and you came into my class, and all of a sudden there's like this light in your eyes, your hair's a little blonder. You'd gotten so skinny. She's already a tiny lady, but like I was so worried. I was like, can I buy you a juice or something? You know, I was like, let me take care of you. And I saw I just saw like the light coming in. You know, I imagine your world like a box, right? There's this top on it, and it's like, nah, this is and then it's like this box, the top of it opens up, and the light comes in. And I'm starting to feel like the light's coming into your world a little bit for you personally. I know that you're still in it. Where are you in it now?
Well, I think it's interesting you ask that, because you think, you go through phases with it. I mean, I do. And especially since I can't see him.
Yeah.
So at first, when they said I couldn't see him, I was so relieved, because I was going too much, and it was just hard. It's just hard, and plus it's not right around the corner, but still. So that was okay. And then they do like a FaceTime thing, which is really, he doesn't even know where to look. But the hardest part for me, and which is just about me actually, is because I can't touch him, I can't hug him. I always think he must be so lonely, and no, but in my head, he's all alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he understands. I mean, I don't think he does, but like for us, like that's what I
totally. It's tactile. It's touch.
Yeah, and he probably thinks I abandoned him.
Yeah,
if he even. And I know a couple times he'd kind of give me this look since COVID. Once in a blue moon, I'd see a little look, and I was like, "Oh, he's pissed. I'm not there," because he doesn't understand.
Yeah,
Totally. The girls are funny there. The girls at work they said they love him. He's always hugging them and kissing them, and I think he thinks I'm you, but I'm like, it's okay. Just go with it, honey. It'll be fun. So, and he's. It's probably better this happened, because I know it is, because he was able to acclimate a little bit. Yeah. When I was always there, it was. I don't know how much he understood, but you know what I mean. It had to be a little bit like.
Yeah, who's this woman?
Why is she here? Why are you going? Wait, what? Like, once again, I don't know exactly what he understood, but he does seem much more relaxed now, not nearly as violent or aggressive as he was. And so for me, though, lately it's just been, I'm happier for sure. But there's always like that little thing about like, not really guilt so much, but I guess maybe a little guilt, feeling like I've abandoned him, basically. I basically been like, okay, later, I'm going to go on with my life. Woo! Yeah. And then, but always knowing it's there. But it's like, then the thing is like, well, everybody used to ask me, well, what's the doctor this? And I said, the doctors, they don't say anything. The prognosis is he's going to die from this, period. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. End of story. And that's what I tell my kids, because even last night, I had to talk with my younger daughter, and there's a little hope in there, Yeah. And I don't blame them, of course. Yeah. But I have to be realistic with them. Totally. I can't have them hanging on to something, and it's just never going to happen. So it's, it's challenging.
It's light and darkness. I think about it all the time. This podcast is always like, I thought about people's stories with like the angel and the devil on their shoulder, and our own demons, and then these moments of light and hope and your best self, And I think that the hard part is that you just, there's always a tug of war. It's a tug of war for your I don't know if it's soul, but optimism, and just like, and you've got to be realistic though too. And I guess, I literally could talk to you for hours and hours about this, and I feel like it's so worth the time for people to listen, and especially people who are like, their life, our lives don't play out in a way of like, well, we get married, we have kids, and sometimes our careers start earlier or later, and then, some tragedy can happen, and then it's, how do you come out of it? I guess my question to you, as we start to wrap up this time together, because I want to follow up, because I do think it's important for people to know that your life is not defined by one thing. Mm-hmm. What advice do you give to anyone who may be at a point in time in their life where it feels like their life should look a certain way? Like, you're a mother of 2 teenage girls, and like, I know that you probably didn't think your life would be here right now.
Not at all.
How do you pivot? And then advice about just being at the stage and giving back to yourself.
Yeah.
When you should be supposedly like giving of yourself to this person that's your spouse.
Yeah. Advice. Well, I guess, of course I never imagined I'd be in this position ever. Sitting down here. No, just kidding. Exactly.
Sitting down
literally
here
in this position.
yeah. On fur rugs around dogs.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah.
I love it. But it's hard, and you just have to. I think, and for me, it's been a lot about letting go of the guilt and realizing that I didn't cause this, and I can't cure it, and it's really sad, and it sucks for him, and it sucks for my kids. But then, you just kind of, I have just decided that, well, I'm just going to do whatever I can to move on with my life. And that's been a hard thing for me to actually just say out loud. Not move on as if he doesn't exist, but move on as if, well, he does. I mean,
his body.
Is, he hasn't been there for a long time. I mean, I haven't had a conversation with him for 4 years or something. I mean, it's crazy.
His body is here, but his mind and his soul.
That's a really hard thing because it's a hot mess in your own head. Like, you're like, well, what do I?
Well, and it's tough, too, because you've got a Catholic background, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like there's a lot of soul, and it's in there somewhere, and keep looking, and it's like, but
and a lot of people get judgment. Not a lot of people, but a few. Well, you're married, and I'm like, I know, but like, of course I know that. But it's okay for me to move on with my life.
Yeah,
it is.
Yes,
and that has to be that way, in my opinion, because otherwise, what's going to happen? I'm not going to move on, and then unfortunately he'll pass away, and then what? Then I'm sitting there like an idiot, like, what am I going to do now? Or like have no self-esteem at all, or have no.
Your life doesn't stop,
right? Because
that's right. His is so different. It's on his life no longer is what it used to be.
Mm-hmm. And I was telling my daughter last night, like, she was saying something about being a single mom or something, and I said, yeah, I never asked for that, but it's very difficult. I mean, I have highest respect for single moms now that I'm doing it, I said, I didn't ask for, nobody asked for this. Dad didn't ask for this. And like, you just do the best you can and try and make it okay. And just try not to lose yourself, because that's what was happening to me. And I probably needed to go through that stage of the grief, because you're grieving.
Yeah.
It's a grieving process. And it's, unfortunately, it keeps going.
Yeah.
Which I think most grieving does, you know what I mean? Like if you lose someone passes away or something, but because you feel like he's passed away, but he hasn't.
No, it is. And it's the hardest thing
it sucks.
to even have. Again, it's the hardest thing to talk about, because you don't want to kill optimism and hope.
Right.
But then in the next breath, you're really killing the optimism and hope for your future. Mm-hmm. If you are thinking that something's going to happen, which literally scientifically, like it can't be reversed.
Mm-hmm. I had to be very like harsh on myself about that. Like, look, here's the deal.
Yeah.
And kind of with my kids, which maybe people, disagree with. I don't really care, because they need to know what's going to happen. And and sometimes I think about Adam and like how his life was just taken away like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think I probably told you how he's walking down the street because I imagine it.
Yeah.
Walking down the street and then stops, and like there's a rug under him, and somebody goes, just pulls the rug out. He falls down. He doesn't know where he is, who he is, why he's there, and no one can help him at all. Done.
Yeah.
That sounds very harsh, but that's really what it is.
That is really what it is. It is.
He doesn't know who, what, why, where, how do I get, It's got to be, I can't even imagine that, I can't. Sometimes I think it's, I think about people with ALS, which is a horrible thing too.
Yeah.
They have their brain but no use of their body, which is better.
I know.
I don't know.
I mean, and that's the thing is that I think it's just about. I think it's just about how you just move. You just have to keep moving, no matter what, and you don't have the answers. Mm-mm. And I think with something like this, all you can do is do the very best you can, and have someone remind you that you're doing the best you can.
Because you never feel like you are.
No.
Never.
No.
I mean, that's a caregiver thing too. I mean,
I wish there were books on how to be a caregiver, but I think right now it's these kind of conversations to where maybe one person hears it and they can take a breath and maybe allow themselves to like lay off the gas pedal of the shame spiral, you know? I mean, it's crazy. I think that the sunshine that's coming into your world now it's so cool to watch you starting to write again. Mm-hmm. It's so cool to see you just talk in a way that I can feel you breathing again, which for me is like, because before it was like, I could just feel you like, you know when the kid comes at you and they're like, Wah! And you hold their head and they're just fighting through. Like that's how when I saw you go through it, I was like, oh my God, she's got, you know,
like punching the air.
Totally. And knowing like you can't, it's like Goliath because he's just an air Goliath. And now I can just feel you take that breath. And it's something that I admire. And you've just given me perspective about my own life. And I think that through COVID and what we went through as friends, and then seeing like what I thought I could take as a friend or as just anything. Like you think that you're gonna dissolve into a million pieces, right? Because if something comes your way, like you forget how tough the human spirit is, and then you're reminded by somebody like you. And then you're like, shit.
Because you people say, I don't know how you do it. And I go, you just do it.
Yeah.
And you would do it too.
Yeah.
You would. It's not fun, but you would. And you do it the best you can and you get through it. And because people tell me, oh, other people leave. I'm like, how could you ever leave somebody like that? I guess people do. Nobody I know. Yeah. But it's just one of those things, you know. Yeah. God just puts certain things in your life sometimes, and yippee, that's for you. Thank you.
Totally.
Yay, I got mine.
I love it. Well, you know, I guess it's so funny when I was doing this podcast and I was like, oh, I want to have people who are like these big philanthropic people who are like changing the world. And then it's so funny because you've changed my world.
Aww.
And I mean, I really mean that. You've changed my world. And I mean, in such a way where I'm like, you make me feel like I have so much more to do. And so just know you don't have to be saving the goddamn world because you're an example to your daughters and you are an example to me as your friend of like, come on, show up and just be a little better. You don't have to be perfect.
Just showing up is half the battle.
Yeah.
And you know, do well. You'll do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. And you will
do
too.
it well.
I love you.
I love you too.
Well,
honey.
I can't wait to check back in with you later and see what goes on with your writing, what you create. And then also just, you know, as we go through this as friends and, you know, what happens to Adam, I just know that, you know, you're doing the best you can and you're doing it really well.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Keep trying.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And Sally, where are you? Like on Instagram? I know that you're like, oh my God, so many people are going to look me up.
Oh my God.
But yeah, to follow your story. And then who knows? I mean, you might have some hit singles coming out. It'd be cool to for people to check back in.
I don't do Facebook really, but I am on Instagram, but I don't really ever post much. But I guess
that's all right. But yeah, maybe you start doing it more. What's your?
See what my kids are doing.
Right, I love it.
I know I got it.
What's your Instagram?
If people would ask me that,
is it?
Think
just
it's
your first name,
Sally. It might be Sally Ries Walked.
Okay, you'll get back to me and I'll post it with it.
I don't know.
I love it. I love it. Well, other than that, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
And
thanks for joining us on this longer episode of Seraphine. All right. We'll see you on the other side.